There's a strange little scene that plays out every spring at garden centers all over the place. Someone walks in dreaming about bowls of bright yellow lemons on the kitchen table, buys a small tree in a black nursery pot, carries it home like a promise, and by midsummer that promise has turned into 3 pale leaves, a few thorns, and one stubborn branch that looks like it's thinking about giving up. The owner blames the weather, or the fertilizer, or bad luck, and then next year they try again. Same tree, same pot, same disappointment. And the hard part is, lemons in containers are not nearly as mysterious as people have been led to believe. Fussy? Sometimes. Particular? Absolutely. But impossible? Not even close. There was a time when people who had no greenhouse worth bragging about, no shelf full of branded powders, and no glowing phone screen to consult every 10 minutes, still managed to keep a citrus tree alive and useful beside a porch, against a wall, or near a bright window. They did it because they understood something we've slowly traded away. They didn't just own a lemon tree, they read it. That's what gets lost now. We buy the plant, skip the reading, and then wonder why the relationship never works. A potted lemon is not a decoration with roots. It's a small system living on your terms, in a tight little world where every mistake gets concentrated. Too much water stays too long, too little food runs out fast. Cold settles in all at once. Heat bounces off brick and cooks the roots. In the ground, a tree can search, stretch, buffer, and recover. In a pot, it depends on your judgment. The good news is that judgment can be learned, and it doesn't take anything fancy. If you want lemons like crazy in a pot, the answer is not to baby the tree harder. It's to understand the few simple things that matter most, and do them in the right order. Once you see those clearly, a lemon tree stops feeling temperamental and starts feeling readable. The leaves tell you things. The soil tells you things. The shape of the growth tells you things. And when you start responding at the right moment instead of the panicked moment, everything changes. So let's reclaim 10 simple tricks that turn a potted lemon from a struggling purchase into a productive little tree you can actually count on. Not tricks in the shiny magazine sense, real tricks. The kind that come from paying attention, making fewer expensive mistakes, and understanding how this plant lives when its whole world is a container. The first trick is choosing a pot like you plan to grow a tree, not display a centerpiece. A lot of people lose before they ever start because they pick the container by looks alone. It's too small, too shallow, too stylish, or it holds water like a bucket. A lemon tree can tolerate many things for a while, but wet roots with no breathing room will punish you faster than almost anything else. You want a pot that gives the roots room to move without drowning them in a giant swamp of cold soil. Bigger is not always better if the root ball is still small, but cramped is almost always trouble once the plant starts pushing. Think steady, not dramatic. It needs a container with real drainage, enough width for root development, and enough weight that the tree won't tip over every time wind catches the top. This is where old practical sense beats impulse buying. The pot is not just the tree's address, it's its weather, its moisture history, and half its future. Terracotta can breathe, which many growers like, but it also dries faster. Plastic holds moisture longer and weighs less, which can help if you move the tree, but it can heat up fast. Wood can work beautifully if it drains well. There isn't one holy material. The real rule is this: whatever you choose, it must let excess water leave quickly and allow you to manage moisture without guesswork. If water sits, roots sulk. If roots sulk, leaves yellow. If leaves yellow, people start throwing products at the problem. Most of the time, the problem began with the pot. The second trick is building soil that drains fast but doesn't turn into dust by noon. This is another piece of knowledge that used to be more common. People understood that a plant in a container does not live in ordinary yard dirt, and it shouldn't sit in a heavy bagged mix that collapses into muck after a few waterings. Lemons want moisture, yes, but they want oxygen right alongside it. They like a root zone that feels open, loose, and quick to drain, while still holding enough water and nutrition to keep the tree pushing. That means your mix should be coarse enough to breathe, and stable enough not to sink into a dense brick over time. Many good growers use a blend that includes quality potting mix with added bark, perlite, pumice, or coarse material to keep air pockets alive. The exact recipe can vary, the principle cannot. When you water, the excess should move through. When the mix settles, it should not become a soggy mattress around the roots. If you squeeze a wet handful and it stays in a heavy clump for too long, that's a warning. A lemon in a pot needs a soil structure that acts more like a sponge with open channels than a bowl of pudding. And this matters because roots are where the whole story starts. People often stare at the leaves for answers, but container citrus problems are usually root problems wearing leaf symptoms. Fix the hidden environment, and the visible parts often follow. The third trick is giving the tree more sun than you think it wants, then watching how heat behaves around the pot. Everybody hears that lemons love full sun, and that's true. But full sun on the leaves and punishing heat at the roots are not always the same thing. A lemon tree wants long, bright hours, especially if you expect flowers and fruit. Weak light gives you weak energy, and weak energy means poor blooming, thin growth, and fruit that stalls or drops. If your tree is only getting a gentle slice of morning light and shade the rest of the day, it may survive, but it won't perform like the tree you imagined. At the same time, container growing asks you to notice what the ground usually handles for you. A black pot on a blazing patio can heat the root zone far beyond what the top growth is comfortably telling you. Sun is good, baked roots are not. So the trick is placement with awareness. Give the canopy the light it craves, but don't ignore reflected heat off stone, metal, or walls. In brutally hot spells, sometimes the smartest move is keeping the tree in bright exposure while shielding the pot itself, or making sure afternoon conditions don't cook the root ball into stress. This is what reading a plant looks like. Not following one sentence on a tag, but noticing how sun and heat behave in your exact space. The fourth trick is learning the difference between watering thoroughly and watering constantly. This one alone rescues more lemon trees than any miracle tonic ever sold. People get nervous with container plants. They see dry surface soil, grab the hose, and keep the plant in a permanent state of damp misery. Or they swing the other direction, forget about it for too long, and the tree dries to the point of leaf curl, flower drop, and stalled growth. Neither rhythm works. What works is deep watering followed by a meaningful dry down near the top of the mix before you water again. Not bone dry all the way through, not wet all week. Just that healthy cycle where roots get a full drink, extra water escapes, and then the mix begins to breathe again. Stick a finger down past the surface. Lift the pot if you can. Learn the difference in weight between freshly watered and ready for water. Watch the leaves, but don't wait until they droop like a flag of surrender. A lemon tree prefers consistency, but consistency does not mean constant wetness. It means a predictable rhythm of drink, drain, and breathe. Once you understand that, a lot of confusion clears. Yellow leaves are not always hunger. Fruit drop is not always bad pollination. Sometimes the plant is simply living in a root zone that never gets a chance to recover from your kindness. The fifth trick is feeding for steady strength instead of sudden lush growth. This is where modern habits can really get people in trouble. We are used to instant responses. Something looks weak, so we hit it hard. Big dose, strong formula, fast green up. But a potted lemon that gets pushed into soft, flashy growth without balance often becomes more vulnerable, not less. You don't want a tree that races and crashes. You want one that keeps enough energy in the bank to flower, hold fruit, and replace leaves without exhausting itself. Citrus are hungry compared with many container plants, especially when they're actively growing and fruiting. Over time, watering washes nutrients out of the pot, and the tree can only use what remains available in that small root world. Regular feeding matters, but the trick is regular, measured, and seasonally aware. A good citrus fertilizer can help, especially one that includes the minor nutrients these trees often appreciate, but it works best when applied with some restraint and observation. If growth is pale, weak, or small, the tree may need nutrition. If growth is dark, rank, and all leaf with no flower ambition, you may be overdoing it. There's a steadier way to think about feeding. Don't ask, how can I force this tree to explode? Ask, how can I help this tree maintain honest strength? That shift in mindset saves money and saves disappointment. Real productivity is not a fireworks show, it's repeatable health. The sixth trick is not letting the tree waste itself trying to do too much too soon. This is one of the most painful lessons for impatient growers, because the little fruits are so charming. You bring home a young lemon tree, it blooms, maybe it sets a handful of tiny fruit, and every part of you wants to protect those baby lemons like treasure. But if the tree is still small, under-rooted, or building its framework, a heavy fruit load can act like a tax it cannot really afford. The plant pours energy into holding and sizing fruit when it should be using much of that strength to establish branches, leaves, and root mass. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is remove some flowers or early fruit on a young tree and let it build. That feels wrong to people who only count success by what they can harvest today. But experienced growers know better. Delayed gratification creates a stronger tree that can carry more later without collapsing into weakness. You are not losing lemons. You are investing in future capacity. This is one of those bits of ordinary judgment we've drifted away from. We want proof immediately. The old practical approach was calmer. Build the system first. Let strength come before display. It works with fruit trees, gardens, pantries, livestock, even houses. The foundation pays you back. The seventh trick is pruning for shape, air, and light, not for drama. People often either avoid pruning altogether because they're afraid, or they cut so aggressively the tree spends months trying to recover from confusion. A potted lemon does not need theatrical pruning. It needs sensible guidance. Dead wood should go. Crossing branches that crowd the center can go. Weak interior growth that gets no light and only steals energy may go. Any suckers from below the graft should definitely go, if your tree is grafted, because that growth is not there to help you get good lemons. It's there to take over. Beyond that, think about what you're trying to create. A balanced, open structure that can hold leaves in good light, move air through the canopy, and support fruit without becoming a tangled mess. If the inside of the tree is so dense that light barely reaches it, productivity suffers. If one side is racing and the other is starved, correct it gradually. Pruning is not punishment, it is editing. You keep what serves the tree's future and remove what doesn't. And here's the deeper point. A lot of gardening gets easier when you stop treating every snip like a moral crisis. Plants are dynamic. They respond, they rebalance. Good pruning is not about domination, it is about direction. The eighth trick is understanding bloom, pollination, and fruit drop without panic. Lemon trees can make people emotional because they often put on a show that raises expectations fast. The flowers smell incredible. The tree looks alive with possibility. Then some blooms fall. Tiny fruit drop. A few promising starts shrivel and disappear. New growers assume they failed. Sometimes they did not fail at all. Citrus naturally shed what they cannot support. That's part of the tree's own judgment. Every flower is not meant to become a lemon. Every tiny fruit is not a contract. The real question is whether the tree is setting enough healthy fruit for its size and strength, not whether it keeps every hopeful beginning. If your tree is blooming but never setting anything, then you start asking why. Light may be too low. Nutrition may be off. Temperatures may have swung too hard. Indoor conditions may have limited pollination movement. But if some drop happens during an otherwise healthy cycle, that is often the plant thinning itself to what it can manage. This matters because anxious growers meddle at exactly the wrong time. They overwater during bloom, overfeed after drop, and move the tree too much when stability is what it needed most. Sometimes restraint is the advanced skill. Watch first, diagnose second, react third. The ninth trick is managing the seasonal move like it matters, because it does. A potted lemon lives between worlds. In warm climates, it may stay outside most or all of the year. In colder places, it becomes a migrant, and the transition seasons are where many trees get stressed. People wait too long in fall, then drag the tree indoors after a cold snap has already rattled it. Or they rush it outdoors in spring because one pretty afternoon tricks them into thinking the season has settled. Then cold nights, wind, or sudden blazing sun knock the tree sideways. Moving citrus successfully is less about the exact date and more about the transition. In fall, bring it in before real cold becomes a habit, not after damage starts whispering through the leaves. Indoors, give it the brightest conditions you can, keep it away from blasting heat vents when possible, and accept that some adjustment may happen. In spring, harden it off. Let the tree reintroduce itself to outdoor sun and air in stages, instead of shoving it from a protected window straight into full exposure, like a soldier exiting a bunker. This is another place where impatience costs people. A lemon tree can handle a lot better than we think, if change happens in a way it can read. What it hates is abruptness. The 10th trick is repotting before the tree starts begging in a language you can no longer ignore. Root-bound citrus can still look decent for a while, which is why people postpone this too long. Then suddenly the tree dries out too fast, growth shrinks, feeding seems less effective, and the whole plant behaves like it's living on a knife edge. By then, the roots may be circling hard, compacted, and struggling to explore fresh media. Repotting is not something you do every month in a fit of productivity, but it is part of the long relationship. When the tree has clearly filled its pot, when water behavior changes, when roots are crowding the edges, or when overall vigor slips despite decent care, it may be time. Move up sensibly, not absurdly. Freshen the mix. Loosen circling roots if needed. Give the tree a new root environment before stress becomes its personality. And now here's what ties all 10 of these tricks together. None of them are glamorous. That is exactly why they matter. Most real skill is not glamorous. It is a chain of ordinary good decisions made before the emergency. A properly draining pot, a breathable mix, strong light, measured water, steady feed, sensible fruit load, thoughtful pruning, calm interpretation of bloom and drop, gentle seasonal transitions, timely repotting. That is how you grow lemons like crazy in a pot. Not with one magic ingredient, with readable cause and effect. Years ago, more people lived closer to that kind of cause and effect. If something wilted, failed, spoiled, rusted, molded, blew over, or dried out, you didn't always have the option of replacing it without thinking. You learned to notice. You learned the feel of a good handle, the smell of soil that stayed wet too long, the look of a branch carrying more than it should. You didn't need to turn every small problem into a consumer event. You adjusted, because the adjustment itself was part of ordinary life. That is what I think a lot of people are hungry for now, even if they don't say it out loud. Not just lemons, not just gardening. They want to trust themselves again in some small practical way. They want to stop feeling like every success requires a product line, a perfect app, or a degree in chemistry. And a potted lemon tree is a surprisingly good teacher for that, because it is small enough to observe closely and honest enough to respond fast. If the leaves are pale, it tells you. If the roots are drowning, it tells you. If the light is weak, it tells you. If you get the rhythm right, it tells you that too. With glossy leaves, confident new growth, fragrant bloom, and fruit that actually holds long enough to ripen. It is feedback you can learn from. And once you do, something shifts. You stop handling the tree like a fragile ornament and start caring for it like a living system you understand. That is a different feeling. It makes you slower in a good way, less reactive, more observant, a little harder to fool. Those are gardening traits, yes, but they are also life traits. You begin to notice how often modern frustration comes from skipping the reading stage. People buy tools they don't understand, soil they never check, plants they place by convenience, not need. Then they call themselves bad gardeners when the result makes no sense. But often it makes perfect sense. The plant has been speaking plainly the whole time. We just haven't been trained to listen. So if your lemon tree has struggled before, don't write yourself off. Really don't. Most failures with potted citrus are not signs that you lack some rare gift. They are signs that one or two important conditions were off, and container trees make those mistakes obvious fast. Once you correct the roots, the light, the watering rhythm, and the seasonal handling, you may be shocked how different the same plant can look. And if you already grow lemons well, you know exactly how satisfying that turnaround is. The first time a potted tree goes from surviving to thriving, it feels like more than gardening luck. It feels like you finally learned the grammar of the plant. You can almost sense what it wants before the symptoms become dramatic. That kind of pattern recognition is worth more than any label stuck in the pot at the nursery. I also think this is why people get attached to citrus in a way they don't always expect. A lemon tree asks for attention, but when you meet it properly, it gives back in ways that feel bigger than the size of the pot. The scent of bloom on warm air, the gloss of healthy leaves against a porch rail, the little weight of a ripening fruit in your hand in a season when you nearly gave up on it. Those moments feel earned, and earned things stay with people. One more thing deserves reclaiming, because it catches people off guard more than they admit, and that is the emotional habit of overreacting to every imperfect leaf. A potted lemon tree will sometimes drop a few leaves when seasons shift, when it comes indoors, when light changes, or when it redirects energy. That does not automatically mean the tree is dying. It means the tree is adjusting. If you treat every yellow leaf like a 5-alarm fire, you can create 3 new problems while trying to solve one ordinary transition. You drench the soil, then starve the roots of air. You dump in fertilizer, then push weak growth at the wrong time. You move the plant from spot to spot, never letting it settle long enough to read the new conditions. Calm growers usually do better, because they separate signal from drama. They look for patterns, not single incidents. Is the new growth healthy? Is the soil drying at a reasonable pace? Are many leaves dropping, or just a few older ones? Is the tree holding firmness in the stems? Questions like that keep you grounded. A lemon tree is not asking you to be perfect. It is asking you to be observant. That may sound like a small distinction, but it changes the whole experience. Instead of feeling judged by the plant, you start learning from it. And once that happens, even setbacks become useful, because they point you toward the condition that needs correcting, instead of toward shame or panic. That is especially true in winter, when indoor air is dry, daylight is shorter, and the tree is living through conditions that would confuse any outdoor plant. You are not trying to create perfection then. you are trying to carry health through a less than ideal stretch, without making strain worse. So here's the reclaiming part. Don't let this become another plant you merely own. Learn its signals. Lift the pot. Check the soil below the surface. Watch where the afternoon heat settles. Notice whether new growth is sturdy or weak. Ask whether the tree is building strength or being pushed into performance too early. Make small corrections before you make dramatic purchases. That is how confidence returns, in gardening and in almost everything else worth doing. And I'd love to know where you fall on this, because every grower has a different climate, a different porch, a different level of patience, and usually one hard lesson they never forgot. Was watering your biggest problem, or was it light? Did your lemon tree turn around when you repotted, or when you finally stopped babying it? And if someone in your family used to keep citrus, what was the one habit they swore by? Those are the details that teach more than slogans ever will. Because once you start reading a lemon tree properly, you begin to see a larger truth hiding in plain sight. So much of what looks complicated becomes manageable when you understand the living process underneath it. And that old kind of practical knowledge is still here. It hasn't vanished. It just waits for someone to notice again. One pot, one plant, one season at a time. And if you can grow a lemon tree well in a container, you may find yourself looking at the rest of your garden with new eyes, noticing what else has been trying to tell you the truth all along.